Thanks, Colleen. Our first guest is an award-winning author and podcaster who helps children understand that grief is not something to fear and that God is with us in every sadness. Clarissa Moll's new book, Hope Comes to Stay, a gentle story about grief, loss, and the love that lasts. Clarissa joins us now from Boston, Massachusetts. Clarissa, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me.
So this is such an important topic, I think, dealing with grief and children, partly because, adults are avoiding their own grief as they're caring about children, but they don't know how to deal with children. So tell us a little bit about your background and how this became a focus for you.
That's right. Well, in 2019, on our family's summer vacation, my husband fell to his death in a hiking accident, leaving me to be a young mom, a widow with 4 young children to raise alone. It was a big task, and without Jesus, I'm not sure that ever would have been possible for us to move from survival to thriving. But that's exactly what we have endeavored to do over the last 6 years. And in my career and in my work, I have moved into bereavement advocacy, talking to families and teenagers and children about this hardest journey that any of us will ever take, this journey of loss and grief. And it's a journey that is possible with resilience and with the hope of the resurrection.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss, and that, like so many things in our lives, we take our loss and our grief and we look for resurrection, from it. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with this. Just a little bit too about what age group we're talking about here, because obviously grief for a younger child is different from that of a teenager. So who's your book addressing?
Well, this particular book is for children ages about 4 to 8. And you're so right. Grieving for children is very different from grieving for adults. We'll often see children pop from sadness to happiness, or maybe not even seem sad at all. And we scratch our heads and wonder, because that's not how we experience loss as adults. But God has beautifully equipped children with a growing mind, a mind that takes a long time to understand the deep, deep losses that they endure in childhood. And this is a helpful metabolizing over time. So for most children who are very young, treating them as if they were normal is the best course of action, the best way to be supportive, alongside of sharing about the person that they lost, reminding that child that you care, and trying to be involved in their life, knowing that this loss will travel with them for the rest of their lives as they grow and change.
Yeah, and I guess honesty is really important, right? Because I think sometimes in what I've experienced with parents, they try to hide stuff, from kids. Is that not a key aspect to grieving with children?
Yes, we want to avoid euphemisms. In our household, we use the words dead and died and dying. We use the word grief. We don't say pass away. We don't talk about crossing the rainbow bridge. We want to talk about the realities of life with real words. And while it seems scary to adults or harsh, it is essential to give our children the language that they'll need to be able to talk about the things that they endure. In the same way that you teach your children the ABCs or their basic math facts, when you teach them about grief and loss at a young age in a developmentally appropriate way, you are equipping them with important skills that they will use for many years to come.
So the book, Hope Comes to Stay, is a story of Layla. Just walk us through that story a little bit. What's happening?
Well, I take you through the first year after a significant loss. 1 in 12 children will lose a parent or sibling in the U.S. Before they turn 18. The number soars even higher when we look at children who have grown to the age of 25. And so we know that kids need to understand what that first year of grief looks like. And so you'll watch Leela walk through the seasons of spring and summer, winter and fall, engaging with her loss in ways that are appropriate for a little child. She skates and has fun. She has questions about the people who show up with meals to support her family. All of those kinds of things that my children experienced after my husband died, and as I have worked with families, are very common questions and experiences for children that age.
Mm-hmm. And that is, so important to just kind of walk with them and to help them, I guess, see the the things that are happening, in their life, and be able to just process that as something that's somewhat normal, and in a sense that grief is a normal part of
Yes.
life, but it's not necessarily a normal part of a child's life. I want to ask you a little bit about the illustrations. As we saw them on the screen here, they're really beautiful. Did you work with the artist, or is this something that they did on their own? I think it was Gretchen Powers was your illustrator.
That's right. I'm a former homeschooling mom, and we homeschooled in our house for 9 years. And so I'm a huge fan of picture books. And so when it came time to choose an illustrator, I was admittedly a little bit picky. And Gretchen Powers is so skilled. She created all of the images in watercolor. And really, I gave her the text, and she envisioned what this story could be. So it's a beautiful collaboration of a story that was in my head and in my heart coming out on paper through her paint and through her brush.
It's beautiful. It really is. So, we're talking about this personal interaction between parent and child, or family members and child, but what would you say, churches, parishes can do to support grieving children, and not just the children, but their families?
There is so much that churches can do. And I want to say at the beginning that churches are doing a good job already.
Mm.
And so there is no critique. It is really just do more of what you're doing. Stay grief aware. Talk about caregivers and not simply parents when you're using language in ministries to children, because some child in your midst may not have both parents, plural. Uh, Invite the extended family of the church to be a family for each grieving child. Research has told us that children who endure adverse childhood experiences need one trusted adult in their life for thriving. That's such a small number. And any of us can do that kind of work, whether it is those who are serving in youth ministry, in formation, in classes, or even in the very simple things like showing up to a little league game, or taking a child to soccer practice, visiting a ballet recital. We don't need to have special skills. We simply need to commit to the long haul with a child, to say to that child, I'm deeply sorry for your loss. I love you, and I will stick around as long as it takes to watch you grow into thriving again.
Mhm. We've had many experiences in my life as a priest, and I'm just thinking of one little girl who lost her mom. She was first grade, and her kindergarten teacher was there, at the wake. And I said, "Oh, how great it is that you've come." She said, "Where else would I be? I'd have to be here, for her." And it was just that consoling presence was so important. I want to just quick before you go talk a little bit about your podcast, because it allows people to share their own stories, right? The podcast is Surprised by Grief, and one of the things of recovery that's so essential is people being able to share their own stories. So just tell us a little bit about the podcast and what's happening with that.
Yes, my co host Daniel Harrell and I created this podcast to walk folks through the first year of their own adult grief. We know that not everyone feels comfortable in a support group setting. Not everyone has a friend to reach out to ask about the questions that come along with grief and loss. And so we created this podcast as a space for storytelling. We tell our stories. Daniel lost his wife to pancreas cancer. I lost my husband in an accident. So we have different experiences of loss. But this is so vital for grieving people to understand that it is not the particularities of our loss that link us to one another. It is the universality of grief and the hope that we have in the resurrection that can bind us together as we link arms and walk together toward flourishing.
Well, Clarissa, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and taking time to discuss such an important thing. If people want to find out more about you and the other books you have, your website is ClarissaMoll.com, and the podcast we were just talking about is Surprised by Grief. So thank you so much, Clarissa. Really appreciate you spending some time today.
Thank you.